Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the #1 podcast for the business and marketing side of the lumber, woodworking, hardwood flooring, and sawmill industry. I'm your host, Steve from Acres of Timber. Each week, we feature various wood business owners and entrepreneurs from around the globe. We share their stories, paths, insights so that you can network, learn, and grow your own wood business. Thank you so much for listening. Now enjoy the episode. The Woodpreneur podcast is proudly sponsored by Acres CRM. Acres CRM is the wood industry's only customer relationship management software dedicated to helping you automate your sales and marketing so that you can focus on serving your customers and growing your business. You can visit acresoftimber.com to learn more and to schedule a demo. Once again, that's acresoftimber.com. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve. Today's guest is Bao Loi from DesignCraft Workshop. How you doing, Bao?
Doing good, Steve. How are you?
Good. So I'm glad to have you on. So can you tell everybody a little bit about your background? Like, how'd you get into this space, and tell us what you do?
Yeah, so I started off as an architect. I went to architecture school, got my license and everything. And I was honestly missing the aspect of architecture school that I loved, which was working with my hand. We had a wood shop that was really awesome, state of the art, being able to go out there pretty much on a daily basis, working on your models, working on building stuff. I definitely missed that. So when
Where'd
I
you go to
entered,
school?
I went to the University of Houston. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I stayed in town, save a little money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay close to home,
So
right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, we were able to work on our projects, build stuff. And whenever I went into the workforce, there was a huge disconnect in what actually do, architects do, and what they teach you in college, right? I think a lot of people, a lot of new graduates, they might have that shock, going through college and going to the workforce. It's totally different, and that affected me a lot. So what I did was I purchased my first table saw. I got a saw stop because in college that's what we used. So that kind of started my journey on woodworking part time, just doing cutting boards starting out. From there, it just went to doing more commission work, furniture builds, built-ins, and then yeah, that's kind of like my background and how I got started.
And are you doing this full time now, or are you still an architect?
So I still maintain my license. However, I don't practice architecture anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I do woodworking full time now ever since last October. That's when
Congrats.
Yeah, so it's recent, almost a year now. Yeah, last October, pandemic was the biggest factor in it all. I was working by myself as an architect doing hotel projects. And as we all know, hospitality took a really big dive during that time. So no hotels were being built. Restaurants weren't being opened. Nobody was really investing in that time in that sector. So I pretty much lost all of my projects. It was either on hold or it was canceled. So I took that opportunity to really ramp up the woodworking side of things, because people were still renovating their homes. People needed office renovations. They needed like desks. They needed tabletops. So definitely, it was a lot of work being done on that side during that time.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And so how'd you build up? So what was the process from the time that you bought the first table stop to the table saw, to just going full time?
In terms of like tools, or in terms of just
Just timing. Like what was like document, if you would, to document your progression from like,
okay.
all right, I'm gonna start doing this as a thing, and like what were the stages that sort of made it happen for you to be able to do it full time?
Okay. Um, I think the first thing was working for family. I think that's how a lot of us get started. We do small gifts here and there for our family, cutting boards, small little things like that. And from there, the project starts to get bigger because your aunt might need something or your mom might need something bigger, and you post it on social media, and then suddenly other people in your network starts to ask you, hey, can you build me this, can you build me that? So that was kind of like how I progressed it. um, and I started off in my garage. I'm still in my garage. I'm honest, right now I'm actually looking for a new place to hopefully expand a little bit, mainly because I want to do more of the production side of things, including a 4x8 CNC. Right now, I have a 2x4 Axiom that I do a lot of my products on, and that's one area that earlier on I started, which is Etsy. I think if you want to really start selling stuff, Etsy definitely is the way to go. It's just the marketing on there and the amount of foot traffic you get. I know a lot of people are pretty concerned about the fees, and Etsy does charge a big amount of fee for your listing and everything. But the reality is you're still making a profit if you price it correctly, if you're standing out within that market, whatever you're trying to sell, right? So I started the Etsy, and that's where I sell a lot of my smaller products, trays, kind of like cutting boards. I mainly focus on valley trays and doing minimalist type of design, modern designs. Um, so that helped me in the early stages of the woodworking career to accumulate enough money to invest into more tools. So when we first moved into our home after I got married, I knew that I wanted to do this. I didn't know that I was going to go into this full time, but I knew that eventually it might get there. So I
It was
strategically,
part of the vision.
it was part of the vision, right? So I knew long term I wanted to do this, but I just didn't know when I was going to make that jump. However, I knew that if I was going to do this long term, then I needed the tools to help me to get there. I started off with a lunchbox planer, a small little benchtop jointer, and whenever we moved into this house here, I knew that I wanted to get the bigger tools. So I purchased 12-inch jointer, the biggest tool that I could fit into the garage to help me with the production side, to make sure that I can produce things in a timely manner and I can mill up lumber that in an efficient way to pretty much batch out projects as fast as I could. So that's kind of my logic in terms of purchasing the tools, right? Because I knew that I wanted to do this long term. So that's where I am now. I have all the tools that I currently want and need.
Yeah.
However, I do want to expand more,
You want
and I think
you want bigger versions of what you got, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
and right now it's just space. So space
for
is the
sure.
biggest issue now. I'm in a two-car garage where it was built in the 70s, so back then cars were very small. So you don't really get the full size car garages that you have nowadays. It's pretty small, pretty tight, but with the bigger tools, it's to be expected.
For sure.
Um, so I bring a lot of the projects inside the dining room because we
Okay.
don't really have a dining room table right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Finish
And I
up.
finish
Yeah.
the projects in the dining room.
In
So
the dining room. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
it's what it takes to get it done.
What are you building now? What's your main product service?
Um, I think that's the benefit of like starting out so early is you are able to test the waters to see what you like to do. And I think I'm at that point in the business. So I do furniture builds and also I do built-ins.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know which direction I'm going to take the business because although the furniture builds are very fun, the design is pretty interesting. Built-ins, you do bring in a higher profit for the amount of time you put into the actual projects. Because building cabinets and things like that, it's just building boxes, and it's a lot easier to do that compared to joinery and putting tops together, trying to finish the a table or something like that. Um, so I wouldn't say that I have a certain niche right now. However, I do think that for your business to grow, you do need to niche down. You do need to
Yeah.
pick a certain scope and move forward with it.
Yeah.
Um, but right now, I'm just playing around with different, different projects and to see what I want to do long term.
So I was on your website and I saw that some of your smaller items, and I definitely see the sort of architecture sensibility. And even when you said like your CNC and how you utilize that, like, do you find yourself like, what brain do you have mostly when you're working? Is it like architecture brain with some woodworking, or like woodworker first and then architecture afterwards?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Nobody ever asked me that before. I would say, I would say architecture definitely has a big influence in it.
Yeah.
Um, like as an architect, you got to study pretty much everything from structure to engineering to mechanical, plumbing, and all the systems that goes into the building. And then we also study millwork, so we need to know how the subcontractors are going to put the cabinet together, what type of details are involved in the joinery. So I would say it's I don't I would say I would approach it more as a um, architect for the design, but I'm still very much a woodworker in terms of the processes.
Hmm.
Um, because the the woodworking side of things, it's all about the joinery, is all about how things come together. And I think architecture is more, what is it going to look like in the end? What does the aesthetic look like? What does the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
materials look like? How does the materials play with each other? How does the overall joinery, how does that impact the design, right? So I think it's both, for the most part.
Yeah, yeah. Do you like, when you think about the challenges that you've had to overcome in order to like get to where you need to be, like, what are the things that you feel like you've had to overcome?
Um, I think getting your name out there is the biggest part. Trying to establish yourself and your creative style.
Hmm.
I notice that a lot of it depends on the market, right? Like I don't in my market at least, um, there is a certain style that a lot of clients want, and that's more like farmhouse. It's more like rustic, and it could be just a trend, right? So trying to establish yourself as the person who does minimalistic design, does modern design, that was the biggest challenge to get more clients on board with that. But slowly, I think once you and part of that is trying not to deviate from what you want to do. Because if you are true to your design, if you're true to who you are as a designer, I think more people will notice that. Um, because my biggest, I think the biggest regret I had was starting off was trying to pick on more projects than I needed to. I had
Yeah,
clients who wanted to work with pine furniture, and I told myself earlier on I didn't really want to do that. Um,
yeah,
it's nothing bad with pine furniture, right? Like I don't. There's nothing bad with it. If you want to use pine, go ahead. But I wanted to establish myself more of like a um, high end furniture maker who works with more hardwoods.
hmm,
Um, but I started to take on some pine furniture projects, and it wasn't very satisfying for me.
yeah.
And I slowly start to burn myself out, and slowly more clients who
Making
wanted that type of
farmhouse pine tables and stuff.
right. So more of those type of clients came to me, and yeah, I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I think the struggle is, as a designer, just stick true to who you are,
Mm.
and stick to what you want to do, and eventually the more you work at it, the clients will come, and those who appreciate your work will come. So I think that was the biggest early uh, factor that I had to overcome.
how are you balancing like content creator versus like business owner? Because
Oh
I mean,
man,
you got a pretty sizable like audience size, right?
yeah,
And you got the plans, sell the plans and stuff. And you know, I always tell people to like, pick who you want to be. Um, and you're an architect and a woodworker. You're also a content creator and a business owner, right? Like,
yeah.
how are you balancing that? Like, like just even in terms of like time allocation, like when you're working, right? Because
Yeah,
it's a different brain, right?
right, right.
Why are you so dope? Like, why are you?
I don't know, man. It's I honestly like I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't think like I have perfected it yet.
Mhm.
Um, but coming from what you're saying, it seems like I'm doing something good, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so what I try to do is I try to double dip or triple dip in terms of allocating my time. So if I'm doing a YouTube video, um, I'm also creating that YouTube clips for Instagram, for all the other social media platforms. Um, that's the only way to do it, I think. If you want to do YouTube, build a project for a client and be consistent at Instagram, and posting daily over there. So I try my best to do just one thing, or at least spend my time doing that one thing, and then taking that product, which is that YouTube video, and kind of divvying it up between other platforms to expand that social media presence.
Do you have a team, or is it you doing everything?
It's just me. I record, I edit, I
Wow.
do pretty much everything. Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. For
Uh, do you,
now, for now.
is the plan? So we just did a Woodpreneur meetup, and I'm actually thinking about doing a meetup in Houston because it looks like there's a big chunk of woodpreneurs in Houston as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I just did a Woodpreneur in meetup in Chicago, and there were a couple people like I got to meet like Martin Goebel from Goebel Furniture and Ben from Chef to Table, and they all got like employees, right? Like
yeah.
a team and stuff. Is the plan to grow like that for you?
Yeah, definitely for sure. In terms of like the social media side of things, I definitely want to eventually grow that so that I'm not, sitting behind the computer, all night editing videos.
Yeah,
If I can send that to somebody to do the edits, that's great. If I can hire a camera guy, that'd be awesome too. So I can at least produce the actual product a little bit quicker. I think
sure.
that's the hardest part right now is, or at least the time consuming part is setting up your cameras, taking the shot. And the way that I record is very complicated. I use a DSLR, I use multiple
Oh my
different
God.
lenses. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
my content is more about the storytelling process.
Yeah,
So I really, and I enjoy it. I'm not saying that it's bad or anything like that. I enjoy it. But it is a little bit more time consuming.
sure.
So building a
Well, you
table
were
might
trained
take
you were
me.
trained to do time consuming, long, detail oriented work. So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
kind of fits your brand, right? Like
yeah,
it
exactly.
fits your training. Yeah. It's so fascinating to meet different types of woodpreneurs and their background. Like I do find like the furniture maker type, like people that have like that design aesthetic, like they tend to put a little bit more in terms of, well, their content is actually A, more creative, but B, it is they understand that it's part of the process and it's part of their process. It's not for everybody. um
Yeah.
that helps. I mean, which results, I mean, you have, was it like 38,000 followers, right? Like you
Yeah.
have a,
On Instagram.
how'd you do that? Like, how'd you build up a following?
I mean, being consistent. Like
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
the
yeah.
the first the first year of Instagram, I probably posted 2 times a day for the entire year,
Mm,
every single day. And
The
trying
first year
to
you got on Instagram.
first year, yeah. So that definitely helped
I
the
hope
growth.
everybody's listening to that. So like, well, because I mean, it's true. Like you need to post multiple times a day. I mean,
You
what does
do,
that do
yeah.
for you aside from growth? What does that do as you as a like what are you learning during that process?
I mean, you get better at content creating like so quickly if you're doing that much content.
Mm-hmm.
You start to figure out your voice.
Mm-hmm.
You figure out your style. You figure out what really works for you, and people will see your content more often, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we know the algorithms, and we always try to figure out the algorithms. But ultimately, if you're producing content that is good quality, that is going to bring value to somebody, and you're doing it at a consistent basis, you're gonna be, you'll do fine on social media.
Yeah, and you'll be a beast that be able to create content. Like you'll always know what to make and what's resonating. And I feel like you'll also
Yeah,
connect with your audience in a deeper way, right? Like
for
because then
sure. Yeah,
they'll get to know. Isn't it? Don't you find it fascinating how like the more you put yourself out there, the more people, more like feedback you get from people. Like it actually surprises you, right? Like, oh, people remember that stuff, or they, right?
yeah,
Do you ever get that? Get that?
I do get that, and I'm honestly always still surprised. Like, whoa, like you read that and you
Yeah,
paid
you
attention.
paid attention to me,
Yeah,
and
that's
it's like
awesome.
and it's also it's like a feedback loop too, right? Like it
Right,
kind of
right,
because we do like isolating work, right? Like we're by ourselves in literally our community or maybe the people around us, but not really because they don't really get us.
yeah,
But like but like our community are like the people behind the hashtags and our followers, right? And so when you're able to get feedback and you see like, oh, the work that you're doing is being well received or it impacted one person, like it gives you more confidence and gives you like a little bit more fuel in the tank to keep going, right?
right, right, exactly. Like having the response and having people give input, and being able to take that input for the next pieces of content
Mm-hmm.
definitely is the best way for you to develop as a creator. Just listening to the audience and seeing what they want more of, But sometimes it's just nice, like to post what you want to post, right? Like
Yeah.
don't feel like you gotta always please everybody out there and provide them with what they want. Sometimes you just want to post something cool for yourself, and that's perfectly fine too. As long as you're sticking true to who you are as a creator, I
Yeah.
think and you provide value for people. You'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah. Hey, so you had just talked about like profitable projects, right? So you were saying like the built-ins tend to be more profitable. Why, or how is that? And what kind of built-ins are you doing?
So I just finished a mudroom build out for a client
You
here
designed it as
in.
well?
Yeah, I designed it. We picked out pretty much the colors or the conflicted out, and then I did some consulting with them for like the overall aesthetics of choosing the handles, what would work well with that, what accents and things like that would work well with the design.
That fits you.
So
I could see that. I could totally see that. I totally see how it's like literally a mini build. Like it's a
right,
mini,
right,
it's like a design project that fits your ass, it fits your skills.
right, and those are the clients I want. Like it's very much a collaborative approach for me. Like it's not
Mm,
here, Bao, I see this picture on Instagram or on Pinterest.
Pinterest. Yeah.
Can you build this for me? I'm like, I would tell them, yeah, I can build it for you. It's going
Yeah,
to be
but go
more
find somebody else.
well, it's going to be more expensive, right?
Yeah,
Because the
yeah,
picture
yeah.
the picture they're finding is probably like from some retail store that got it made, out overseas, and it's probably not even hardwood. Um, so it's definitely going to be more expensive. So my approach to that would be like, I can build this for you, but why do you want something exactly like that? Why don't we work together to build something custom for you, build something nicer,
Yeah.
that will fit your needs, right? A little bit better. Um, but you go back to that profitability, the built-ins. For me, it's it's how quickly I can get that project done out of the garage and get paid for it, right?
Yeah.
So every month, if I can bring more cash flow into the business, then that's a good thing for your business because cash flow is awesome, right? You want to make cash, you want to bring in the money every
Yeah.
single month. You don't want to hold out for it. And with cabinets, we're doing built-ins. It's just boxes. It's just putting boxes and sheet goods together. You
Mm-hmm.
don't really have to think much about the joinery. You
Yeah,
don't have
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
really if you have your garage set up where you have the tools to produce large amounts of cabinetry, then that's a great way of bringing money into the business. You're not milling up wood. You're not storing a whole bunch of these random
For
stocks.
sure. And most oftentimes you're dealing with pretty finished wood products as it is,
Right,
right? So you're
right.
not spending time sanding your ass off, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I've recently switched to pre-finish plywood. So I really don't need much sanding or finishing to do, like you said. It's just cutting the pieces out, maybe doing like a rabbet joint or something like that, a dado joint here and there. That's really about it.
Yeah.
It's very quick to get those projects out. So
And your true value is in the design then.
right, right,
That's, are you doing a
yeah.
design fee?
Yes, I am. So
Sick.
I charge a design fee.
In the beginning,
Um,
right?
in the beginning, right? And
Yeah.
that if the client decides to move forward, then we put the design fee as part of the entire project, right?
Yeah, it gets
So
applied. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right. And
Are you doing SketchUp or AutoCAD or whatever?
um for the cabinet projects right now I'm using Shaper 3D.
Okay.
Um I because it's on the iPad
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I can easily make those modifications on site with the client.
That must be fun for you
Um
then.
It is, it is. I try not to stick behind the computer too much or behind the screen too much.
Hmm.
But if it's a 3D model, then I'll do that for the clients. However, I do limit the amount of changes. Um, Only to two
Two
changes,
rounds. Yeah, yeah, of
two
course. Yeah,
rounds, and
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
after that is a change order, and that is a fee on top of that. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, your time is valuable, and I think in
Absolutely. Yeah.
design you can spend a lot of time and you can waste a lot of time in that. So
I
definitely
love
charge
that.
for it.
I love that a lot. I love the model. I kind of tend to because I feel like you get a lot of tire kickers, and like although on the processing end it's fairly straightforward and simple, but I think on the design end you can spend a lot of time and have people waste a lot of your time if they're
Yeah,
not committed. And
right,
so I
right.
kind of, I was talking to somebody the other day and they were saying, yeah, once they fill out a form and they're interested, then we do a mock-up. I'm like, mock-up, you nuts? Like a mock-up without paying? That doesn't make any kind of sense, right? Like you
Yeah,
gotta,
yeah,
it's very time intensive, right?
right.
You got, I mean, and then, if you have something like tables, like people tend to, I don't know. So what's the future hold for your business? Like where is it more of that kind of stuff or like where, and you were just talking about like getting a bigger space. Like what are you thinking?
Yeah. In the future, I would want a I would want to focus more if it's possible doing the content creating and doing
Yeah.
projects. I think that's everybody's dream, right? Like
Yeah,
being
yeah,
able
yeah.
to work for yourself with no clients and have sponsorships pay for the projects and do all that.
Benueto.
But
Oh man.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's a monster. Yeah, with his
yeah,
with his architecture degree.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
awesome.
got a chance to talk to him a little bit at WorkbenchCon this past year, and what he's doing is amazing. He's taking wind turbines, the big old
Yeah.
pedal. What is it? The
Blade.
yeah, the blade, right? So
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
repurposing that and doing some cool stuff with it. But yeah, if that happens, great for me,
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm still happy with doing the commission work right now.
Yeah. I mean, well,
Hopefully,
here's the thing that I think about too, in terms of like, I said, well, if you're a content creator, it is a thing. But if you can get your content creation if you could get your like build a business and then content create along the way or document your projects as a marketing tool and not necessarily care about the views, right?
Right,
Because
right.
that's the key. Like, because then you can spend so much time on like, you know, SEO and blah blah blah. But like if you literally use it as a then you know, if everything else could be like a positive, and if you actually care about the end like the storytelling piece, like you'll actually, I think you can convert a lot more of your prospects because they see like, oh, this guy's got a YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Oh, he
yeah,
tells, you
for
know,
sure.
great stories.
And I
Um,
would say that that's a good point because social media can be a good tool for you, or it could just be a life draining, mess. If yeah,
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
always thinking about the views, subscriber counts, if that's what you're in this for, in terms of social media, like you'll probably get burnt out real quick.
And
Um,
you'll get frustrated that you're not growing. Like,
right.
yeah, you'll get
And if
super
you
frustrated.
yeah, for me, I use it as a business tool. 80% of my commissions come from Instagram.
Nice.
So they find me on Instagram. They don't really go to my website, even though I have a website. Some people see me on YouTube. So definitely, social media is a great platform for you to jumpstart your business. Um,
Mhm.
just just use it as one of the tools that you have in your toolbox, right?
Yeah, yeah. What's your website built on? What is that?
Shopify.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's a cool theme. That looks good.
Thanks. It's
Um,
pretty simple.
yeah, it's pretty simple, but it looks good. I
Yeah.
think it works. Hey, so this is the part of the podcast where I give you any marketing or business advice. Is there anything that you need help with or any challenges that you'd like to think through?
I think the challenge is more of a personal thing. It's more like uh, how are you okay with dealing with the fear of growing? I think that's a big challenge right now. Like not knowing what could happen, and then you're hiring all these people, you're wanting to grow, but then it doesn't really pan out. You know, I think
Yeah.
that fear.
So the question is like, how do you deal with the fear of growing and taking more risk?
Yeah, I think that'd be it.
Okay, so it's interesting because I feel like this is something that I encounter a lot of where people they start to like because it's good to think through many scenarios, right, in your business, like when you're forecasting, when you think about like, okay, if I'm gonna spend a couple $1,000s on this tool, how am I gonna really make this money back, or like how am I, yeah, instead of just buying this tool, or if I start hiring people, how am I gonna make sure that I can afford to keep them on, right?
Right,
And
right.
so, you know, so I guess for one is it's just kind of like it's a mindset issue, is that knowing that uh like you are committed as a business owner and as a woodpreneur, like, and it's you, right? Like you are committed. However, and you have the vision of where you want to be, right? Just look at every major decision as a project, because when you think of it as a project, you're not committed to it as a long term, right? So like, and I like to test things out, like even in terms of like you know, let's say for example, editing, right? Like editing your videos. Uh like I'll look at it and I'll just say, like, I actually just hired somebody and I said, you know what? Like I have enough money to pay this person for 3 months, right? And 3 months is a test for me, right? And what this person is going to do for 3 months is going to free up another person, and that other person is going to help me grow the business even more, right?
Right.
And so for me it's like, and this person went in knowing like, listen, we're going to do this for 3 months, and if it works out, great, we'll continue, but if it doesn't, no love lost, right? we can part ways and still be cool. And that's kind of how you need to like approach the growth of your business. Like business ebbs and flows so much. Like in many of my other businesses in the past, like there are times like we were killing it, making tons of money. And then, you know, there are moments where we had to tighten our belt and we had to lay off some people or cut some expenses or move offices. Like, oh my God, like to be able to downsize an office is like one of the most demoralizing things. But if you realize that as a business owner, as a woodpreneur, your number one thing is to do whatever it takes to keep the lights on. And the lights on meaning you, it means your domain's paid, your Instagram's still up, and your phone is still around, and you still got projects and testimonials and case studies that people will still know that you exist. That's your number one goal. And so whether you fail or succeed, it actually doesn't matter. None of it matters. The only thing that matters is keeping the lights on. So it in a like a woo-woo way, it's about being present with where you're at and being okay with where you're at, but always wanting more and knowing that, like, you know what, if I fail at this, what could I do to mitigate any catastrophe from this failure?
Yeah.
So for me, and as a business owner, we talked about like your time is the most valuable, right? And so like I like to, and I've said this on other podcasts, like you need to make a list of all of the things that you don't want to do in your business at all.
Right.
Like, and then literally just start hiring people to do those things.
For sure.
And the smartest way to do it is to do a freelancer, right? And have this person be competent and affordable, and then literally test them out for 2 months. Like, hey, you know what? I got an extra $500 or, you know, $1,000. I'm going to test this out. And what would that save me in time to outsource in that? All right, 20 hours. What could I do in 20 hours?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
I could do some more prospecting. I could do more content. I could buy some more lumber. I could, you know what I mean? I could run some Facebook or Instagram or YouTube ads, right? Like I could do whatever with that time and money. Right. And so that's it. I mean, I like that question a lot. You know, I've had people that I've talked to and they're like, you know what? I don't want to grow too much because I don't want to get too busy. I'm like, but you're not there yet. You're not busy now. So why even worry about being too busy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like literally deal with that as it comes. And I realize some people, they need to feel a certain level of control. However, when you're a woodpreneur, when you're an entrepreneur, there are a lot of things out of your control. And you just need to focus on what you can control. You don't worry. You can't really worry how many people view your content or, you know, like, but you can focus on the content that you put out. You know, you can't worry about how many email inquiries come in for leads, but you can control how many times you put out ads or how many times you've reached out to potential customers or followed up or quotes that you put out. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that. Is that helpful? Did that answer your question?
I think looking at it as a project, I think that was a biggest takeaway. Like
handling project. I call it the project mindset. Like I literally call it the project mindset. You just say, listen, I got a project, and projects have start and end times.
Right. And you could think of it as a ladder, right? Like taking one rung at a time, or it's easier to climb up that ladder if there's more rungs. So you just pick up one thing at a time and then move up. And eventually you look down and you'll see that, hey, I'm all the way up here now.
I'm all the way up here. Exactly. That's really, really, that's really cool. And I'm glad, I'm really happy that we got the chance to talk and for you to share your story. And
thanks for having me on.
I love your strategy too of your sort of business model. I always tell people like, hey, you know, don't do built-ins because they take too much time. I was like, well, I mean, but for you, you have this crazy skill. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I
You know what I
mean,
mean? But you're a designer. Like, you know how to look at space and create
right,
stuff. And so in
sure.
your head, it's math. It's a design creative. You're making the most use out of this
Hmm.
space based off of what the client needs. And you have the training for that. And then from there, it's math. So you're
Hmm.
literally putting it together. It's like Lego. It's like,
Yeah, yeah. And I think the biggest part that I enjoy the most out of that experience is giving them a product that fits their space, fits their
yeah,
needs, you know? I think that's the biggest joy that comes out of it.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's cool,
Yeah.
man. Thank you so much, Bao. So how can people follow you? What's your Instagram and website?
So Instagram is Bao Loi _ DesignCraft. YouTube is DesignCraft Workshop. And my website is the DesignCraftWorkshop.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bao. I really appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to the Woodpreneur podcast, the #1 podcast for the business and marketing side of the lumber, woodworking, hardwood flooring, and sawmill industry. If you like what you heard, please give us a 5-star rating and review. You can also tap into our community by visiting woodpreneurlife.com. Once again, that's woodpreneurlife.com.